The Q is shorthand for San Quentin, the notorious prison located just across the bay from San Francisco. Despite its reputation, some things are changing within its walls, as we're about to learn from our Sunday morning senior contributor, Ted Koppel.
It's difficult to imagine a more forbidding place with a lovelier view than San Quentin. Alcatraz, perhaps, but that went from prison to tourist attraction 45 years ago. San Quentin, the Q, has stood as a grim monument to punishment since 1852.
And if any of the guards are still speaking to me, could I have a glass of water?
The outside world got an inkling of conditions inside when Johnny Cash performed this song in and about San Quentin for an audience of raucously appreciative inmates almost 50 years ago.
San Quentin, may you rot and burn in hell. May your walls fall and may I live to tell. May all the world forget you ever stood. And may all the world regret you did no good.
That was 1969. But even 12 years later, when Lonnie Morris got here, it was, in every way, a volatile, dangerous place.
You could be stabbed, and if it was against the police, you could be shot, or you're in conflict with another incarcerated person, you could be shot by the police in their effort to break up a violent conflict.
The inmate population continues to have its share of violent criminals, and for the most part, the men still self-segregate along ethnic and racial lines. Prison politics, they call it. An unwritten set of rules that still carry weight. If I started going through the cell blocks here, how many times am I going to see a white guy in the same cell as a black guy?
Probably twice.
Twice, okay. Merlin Woods, you'll be hearing a lot more from him later, is 46. He spent 20 of those years in prison. So that hasn't changed. I mean,
no, it hasn't changed. I think that's been in play for like 100-some years.
Don't get the wrong idea. San Quentin has changed. That's what this story is all about. It used to be a level 4 maximum security prison. Now it's level 2, with a serious emphasis on rehabilitation.
And one of the reasons why I came here was because there's a lot of programs. I'm a lifer.
Because there's a lot of what?
Programs.
Programs.
Yeah, there's a lot, PIA programs, educational programs.
There's a class in computer programming. There's the prison newspaper, the San Quentin News. There are 7 civilian advisors, professional journalists, but the paper is staffed
Incarcerated person, Thomas speaking, I can help you.
by inmates.
What is that, Raz?
And there are actual college classes. So did you apply to come here?
Yes, I did.
So it's kind of like going to college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's free. The patent is free, so.
Now that's bound to raise a few hackles. This image of several thousand hardened criminals, robbers, rapists, killers, broadening their cultural horizons at some taxpayer-supported campus by the bay. Take another look, though. San Quentin remains very much a place of punishment, a correctional institution.
You can come here and become a better person, a better individual by coming to prison.
Let yourself even be more changed. Okay? Ready?
Yeah.
And action.
Come, let's away to prison. We two alone will sing like birds in the cage.
The women are civilian volunteers, members of the Marin Shakespeare Company. They're helping inmates mount a production of King Lear.
How do you feel, just before you come on and see, how do you feel about your sister at this point?
I've already decided I'm going to kill her.
Well.
The themes of trust and betrayal woven throughout King Lear have a unique resonance for this group of actors.
If I give you my full, authentic self, and you give me this character at all times, That's a big betrayal.
All the more reason to really take our time to really get to know someone, not just our image of them
Not
or
just
our
the superficial
stereotype.
or surface kind of know, but the internal
Yeah.
deep know, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and that takes time. That takes time.
We have nothing but time here.
The following individuals have legal bail.
Nothing but time. 35 years ago, CBS News correspondent Gary Shepard focused on the problem of overcrowding at San Quentin.
The prison system's answer has been to put 2 inmates into a tiny cell, 6 feet wide by 8 feet long, designed to barely accommodate a single prisoner.
35 years later, same cells, same overcrowding. You don't have a hell of a lot of room in here.
No, you don't. You can only, it's like one person can only move at a time. Like if we had to turn sideways.
Merlin Woods is of particular interest because of his day job.
At 15, what advice would you give yourself?
He and I are in a similar line of work.
Get an education, like everybody tries to do.
That part of the story when we come back.
Do you remember what advice you got?
We're heading back to the Q, San Quentin Prison. Ted Koppel has already been telling us about some of the rehabilitation going on inside. Time now to hear about an activity you might not expect.
Oh, here's one right here. Here's one right here. Come here, man. What advice would you give
This is where Merlin Woods goes to work every day.
I'm Merlin Woods, a prisoner at San Quentin State Prison in California. I'm serving a 31-year-to-life sentence for being a getaway driver of an attempted second-degree robbery. You are now tuned in to San Quentin's Ear Hustle from PRX's Radiotopia.
And what is Ear Hustle?
Ear Hustle is a podcast that we try to tell the stories of guys inside or life inside of prison. And Ear Hustle basically means eavesdropping in on conversations.
I did not realize that I could be potentially facing life in prison.
I am going to drag you through 4 corners of this cell.
It's like that. It's like, I don't want to be in prison, but I want to know what it's like to be in prison.
Merlin, did you know what a podcast was before you started doing one?
No, I didn't.
Count time, Merlin. It's count time.
Merlin co-hosts and also co-produces Ear Hustle with a civilian, Nigel Poor.
I came in out of curiosity. I wanted to know what life was like inside prison, and I had a lot of assumptions that most people have, that the guys in here were going to be scary, that it was going to be dangerous. And through spending time here, that was really changed.
My name is Stacy Bullock, and I have 150 years to life.
So how old will you be when you go to parole with 150 years?
Something like 208 years.
I was sentenced to 1,010 years and 19 life terms for armed bank robbery.
That's what we're talking about on this episode. Hope and hopelessness in the face of these really long sentences.
I won't go out for parole until Jesus has come back first.
What we try our best to do is go to the yard and find stories that are compelling, that are funny, and we try our best to tell them. And we try to do them in a way where people can identify with them.
People inside
people
or
outside.
people outside?
Outside.
We're going to be hearing a lot about the shoe on this episode. So maybe
Ear Hustle focused one podcast on solitary confinement.
It's the hole, the box, the dungeon.
What prison authorities call security housing units, or the SHU.
I was just sitting there and I'm saying, is this it? I mean, I saw no future. How do I spend the next 20, 30 till I die in this cell? Because I wasn't prepared for it.
Until prisoners filed a successful class action lawsuit against the California prison system, inmates could spend unlimited years in solitary confinement. Now at least there's a 5-year cap. Before he was transferred to San Quentin from Pelican Bay, Richard Johnson spent 19 years in the SHU.
Not that I actually did anything, but they were saying I was a gang member or something.
Were you?
Not really.
Come on, not really is bull. Not really means yes, I was, but
At the
maybe-
time.
At the time. Solitary is used in some countries to drive people crazy. I mean, that's the whole point of it.
Right. That was their intent, but I resisted. You know, I'm still resisting because you don't fully get over that. Never allow anyone to make you less than what you are. That's the true intent of isolation, is to belittle you, demean you, dehumanize you, to make you a lesser person than what you are.
What can't you talk about? Anything?
Haven't got there yet. So I don't know what we can't talk about yet.
San Quentin's public affairs officer, Lieutenant Sam Robinson, is the ultimate decider. He could block a subject, although
there hasn't been that instance yet. There have been some that that weighed mightily on me. The podcast, The Boom Boom Room.
What is the Boom Boom Room?
The Boom Boom Room is a name that's given to a place where I guess people conjugate.
Where people come together.
Where people come together.
And do what people do
and
when
do
they
what
come
people
together.
Do what
Yes,
adult people
I
do.
get it. I get it.
For me, it was like getting a taste of freedom. And then for her, it was like getting a taste of her husband.
I'm standing against the wall, and she just like leaned against me with her head on my chest, and we talked without talking, you know? It was like we was a regular couple. We wasn't in prison. We was just us. Yeah.
But you let it go through.
I let it go through because it was true and authentic, and it represented conjugal visits are even much more than what we in society believe. It's just this opportunity to do what adult people do.
It's being a family.
Being a family, yeah.
So this one starts from him at the hospital?
Yep.
Ear Hustle is doing something unique in the history of San Quentin. It is conveying the stories and voices of society's outcasts literally around the world. It's a popular podcast, isn't it?
Shockingly popular.
How popular?
How many downloads are we at right now?
Close to, we're probably at 8 million now. 8 million downloads.
For each program?
No, for our first season. That would be cool.
The most vulnerable among these prisoners have often been punished well beyond the sentence that any court handed down, and they are desperate to have somebody, anybody, listen.
I was raped in prison, and it took something out of me.
Convicted of an armed robbery, Curtis Roberts is doing 50 years to life.
And then when the rape happened, it was like, ain't nobody coming to rescue Curtis. Ain't no way getting out of this. And this is what you have to live with for the rest of your life. There was a little girl that came in here to the prison. And my definition, a little girl, a high school girl, she heard the podcast. And she said, Curtis, if you don't mind, I'd like to share my secret with you. I said, what's your secret? She says, Curtis, I was raped like you were. And I was like, oh, my heart just broke, you know? She promised me that she was gonna go home and tell her mom and dad, and it was no longer gonna be her secret. And so to me, that finally Curtis Roberts has done something good.
Someone in the California governor's office clearly agrees because Curtis is being considered for clemency.
You know, I've never used a cell phone. I don't know technology out there. I'm pretty nervous.
Freedom can be a scary prospect after decades in prison. Erlon and Nigel were out on the yard a few weeks back interviewing inmates on just that.
I've been in this little bubble. Prison is its own world. I mean, being in here, I can tell you that this is a whole different world, a whole different society than it is out there. It is so big and so vast out there in society right now that I feel a little overwhelmed. I feel like I'm gonna be a little bit overwhelmed, but I welcome it.
So this is a prison where you have a lot of people that has probably been incarcerated over a decade. And individuals are on a trajectory to go home. So they're trying their best to change their life. They're trying their best to apply themselves in programs and immerse themselves in programs.
I'm confused by one thing you said earlier.
Okay.
You say a lot of people here preparing to go home. And I'm hearing a lot of people here, 33 to life, 50 to life, 199 to life.
Yeah, but that don't stop you from changing your ways and changing your life. Just because I have 1,000 years to life, you never know what may happen tomorrow.
What advice did your
And
parents?
thanks to a prison podcast, that's a message being heard regularly now beyond the razor wire and these old walls.